In the vast sprawl of the galaxy's inner core, where stars pulse like the rhythmic breath of some ancient celestial titan, the Galactic Council convened within its citadel of light. It was a place not built, but grown, a living structure of crystalline energy suspended in the folds of space-time. Every race that mattered had a voice here. Every world that sought progress, peace, and protection paid homage to this interstellar parliament. And Earth, once a backwater planet known more for its internal conflicts than cosmic contributions, had become one of its most influential members. Ambassador Kalen Idris stood before the convocation chamber's curved viewport, his silhouette backlit by the swirling glow of a nearby blue giant. His human form was familiar now among the delegates, a symbol of Earth's unrelenting rise from obscurity to prominence. Yet even as he stared outward, there was a tightness in his jaw, a tension behind his sharp eyes. The council chamber hummed with the voices of hundreds of species, vocal cords, pheromone trails, bioelectric pulses, all translating into meaning through the universal lattice. But Kalen heard none of it. Not anymore. They were debating the Protean Mandate, a sweeping resolution that would grant the Council direct authority over resource management on member worlds, a thin veil over total control. Earth's opposition was no secret. Kalen had made his stance clear. But now, the weight of that stance was growing unbearable. Behind him, High Chancellor Ravana Sithrix hovered on a platform of anti-grav mist, his luminous tendrils gently folding into a contemplative pose. Earth resists because it forgets what chaos birthed it. Ravana intoned, his voice sonorous, his disdain polite but unambiguous. Kalen turned, his voice clipped. Earth resists because we remember it. We remember tyranny disguised as unity. We know what it means when distant powers decide the fate of billions. A murmur rippled through the delegates. Even the Towery, who rarely acknowledged emotional display, flickered with iridescent concern. The words weren't simply opposition. They were a warning. Outside the chamber, aboard the Earth delegation's cruiser Solstice's wake, Dr. Islam Marin monitored the data feeds from council sectors. A former astrophysicist turned intelligence liaison, Isla had long since traded telescope arrays for encrypted diplomatic ciphers. Her console pulse alerts, unrest on Mentor 6, increased patrols on the Drosari border, planetary embargo, threats forming like storm clouds on a political horizon. She paused, scanning the summary again. Someone was orchestrating a pressure campaign, leveraging council policy to bend Earth into compliance. It wasn't just politics. It was siegecraft. Her comlink flared. Idris to Marin, you have the file confirming. The Protean Mandate is supported by 9 out of 12 blocks. If we veto, we fracture diplomatic trust. If we don't, we hand over control of Earth's lunar mineral rights. A beat. Silence. Then Kalen's voice returned, quieter this time. We're past diplomacy. The words struck Isla like static in the air. She understood. Earth had played the game. Earth had risen within the Council, brokered peace between ancient rivals, shared quantum lattice technology that redefined travel and trade. But in return, they had been made to bend, incrementally, imperceptibly, until the curve had begun to break. Now Kalen stood at its end. Later that cycle, in a private enclave far beneath the main chamber, Kalen met with Minister Elian of Ortis Prime, one of Earth's few remaining allies. The Orton's translucent skin shimmered in the low lighting, revealing a nervous pulse in its cranial crest. You know what this will mean, Elian whispered, its voice like water running through glass. Isolation, trade collapse, possibly war. Kalen nodded. And if we stay, we become a proxy, a puppet. You are loved here, Kalen. Your people admired. Admired isn't the same as free. The Orton withdrew, its shoulders slumping with a weight only the truly ancient feel. Kalen was left alone, staring at the diplomatic tablet in his hands. The declaration of withdrawal was already drafted. The Earth Assembly had authorized it, quietly, in a vote kept off official channels. His signature would trigger the cascade. Earth would be the first world to leave the Galactic Council of its own volition. Back on Earth, protests had turned into silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of breath held in uncertainty. News of the Council's attempts to standardize planetary AI governance had not gone over well. Earth's independence had always been hard-won, from carbon wars to climate collapse, and its people sense a foreign hand pushing past their thresholds. General Sato, head of the Earth Defense Triad, had already begun recalling fleets from outer patrol. Orbital installations were shifting into encryption protocols designed for combat scenarios. The world was preparing for the worst, not with panic, but with grim determination. When Kalen returned to Solstice's wake, Isla was waiting by the command dais. She looked up from her display, eyes tired but resolved. "They'll retaliate," she said. "Maybe not immediately, but they will." Kalen gave a nod, his gaze fixed not on the stars beyond, but on the symbol etched into the ship's hull, a blue sphere wrapped in the Ouroboros. "Earth, eternal and defiant. We've always survived retaliation," he said. "We learned from them. Now let them learn from us." As the cruiser's engines flared and detached from Council orbit, every relay in the galaxy lit up. The Council's top channels issued a flurry of communiques, diplomatic cables, emergency sessions, attempts at mediation. None were answered. Earth was gone. In the silence that followed, the galaxy trembled, not with noise, but with the echo of a vacuum suddenly formed. A singular presence removed from a carefully calibrated equation, as if a sun had blinked out, and no one yet knew what new gravity would take its place. The Council watched, stunned and scattered, while on Earth, somewhere deep in the mountains of New Columbia, a child looked up at the stars through a cracked skylight and whispered, "They're going to come for us now, aren't they?" Her mother, a former diplomat who had once dined with Martian senators and sung the anthem of the Council in a dozen alien tongues, said nothing. She only wrapped her arms around her daughter and held her close, staring into the dark sky that, for the first time in a generation, no longer felt shared. Outside, the wind howled not in fear, but as if to carry the voice of a world that had remembered its name. The first tremor wasn't declaration or a missile, just silence. After Earth's sudden absence, the Galactic Council flooded Kalen Idris's channels with desperate pleas, coded missives, veiled threats wrapped in diplomatic formality. None were acknowledged. By the third cycle, a formal summons was issued. Appear before the Council tribunal or be declared in breach of the Interstellar Accord. Kalen deleted it without comment. Aboard Solstice's wake, Earth's flagship now orbiting a secure relay beyond traditional jump routes, Dr. Isla Marin sifted through intercepted chatter from across the quadrant. Council fleets were repositioning, their diplomatic language hardening with each unanswered message. Elian of Ortiz Prime sent one last encrypted signal, a single line in Orton's script that translated loosely to, "They mourn in silence before the storm." Kalen stood in the observation ring, alone, arms behind his back. Below him stretched the curve of a distant gas giant, its rings scattered with the silhouettes of mining satellites once co-owned by Earth and the Council. Now they floated idle, access cut. Resources that once fueled hundreds of Outer Rim colonies lay beyond reach. "They think we're bluffing," Isla said, stepping into the chamber. Her tone was calm, but beneath it lay the crisp edge of unease. Kalen didn't turn. "Good. Let them." Isla's fingers twitched at her side. "We have 8 planetary governments formally requesting clarification. They're asking if this is a temporary negotiation tactic, or if Earth is going rogue." He looked at her then, eyes dark but unshaken. "What do you think?" "I think they're terrified. And I think that terror makes them dangerous." It had begun days before the official withdrawal. The Protean mandate wasn't just a line crossed. It was a culmination. For years, Earth's warnings have been ignored. Creeping surveillance over planetary AI networks, mandatory biometric compliance for Council delegates, trade bottlenecks disguised as sanctions. The final vote merely made the decision inevitable. Back on Earth, in the chamber beneath the old Pacific Bastion, the Earth Assembly voted 318-2 in favor of total withdrawal. No parade, no media spectacle, just silence and the sound of signatures locking into the global ledger. Kalen received the authorization minutes later. There had been no cheering, only an exhale that felt centuries old. He read the transmission once, then again, then initiated the protocol of Severance. Every Earth-registered asset in Council space was recalled. Diplomatic channels were suspended. AI interfaces linked to the council mesh were disconnected in a synchronized sweep that echoed like a technological heartbeat being stopped mid-beat. The response was immediate. 4 minor sectors attempted to detain Earth envoys still in transit. One of the cruisers, Odyssey's Veil, never responded to final docking requests. Its beacon went dark near the Verge Nebula. Kalen ordered no retaliation, yet when Isla reviewed the encrypted file recovered from a failed council intrusion attempt, her breath caught. They're assembling a subcommittee without Earth representation to determine containment strategies. Military in tone, not hypothetical. Kalen absorbed the news without visible reaction. They're already preparing to make an example of us. Or divide us from within, Isla said. And that was the deeper game. Earth was not one voice. It was many, and its unity had never been effortless. Political factions within the Earth assemblies still harbored doubts. Corporations with deep ties to the council economy began lobbying for conditional reentry. Some argued Earth could leave without abandoning diplomacy. Others whispered of revolt. The council sent envoys to Mars, to Europa, to orbital colonies loyal to Earth but dependent on interstellar trade. They offered incentives, protection, autonomy, reintegration. They hoped to fracture Earth not with firepower, but with fear and promises. Kalen acted before they could, in a broadcast that bypassed council satellites and streamed directly through Earth's independent comnet. He stood at the summit of Voston Reach, where the stars blanketed the sky with ancient light. "People of Earth," he began, his voice unwavering. "For generations we have reached outward, seeking to join something greater than ourselves. We found a council bound by order, but not always by justice. We brought them our science, our courage, our questions, and in return, we were given conditions, constraints, control masked as collaboration." He paused, letting the silence carry weight. "We leave not out of defiance, but necessity. Our sovereignty is not a variable in a vote. Earth will walk its own path. We do not seek war, but we will not accept chains, no matter how gilded." The speech lasted less than 4 minutes, but within hours, it echoed across 100 systems. Some worlds called it treasonous, others revolutionary. And for the first time, the word Earth was spoken not as a subordinate member of a vast union, but as something alien and unpredictable. Isla watched the final segment from the ship's secure deck. Around her, Earth defense operatives ran drills with a quiet urgency. They had no illusions. Conflict was not a question of if, but when. Later, in the ship's war room, Kalen and General Sato reviewed projections. The Council's military response would not be immediate. They were too diplomatic for that. But blockades were likely. Proxy engagements near Earth-aligned colonies. Political destabilization efforts in outposts barely held together as it was. "We'll need allies," Sato said bluntly. "Real ones. Not just words of sympathy from fringe civilizations." Kalen didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the digital map, the sprawling lattice of interconnected worlds, each node flickering with volatile potential. "There's strength in uncertainty," he said finally. "Let them wonder how far we're willing to go." Back on Council Station Viren 8, Ravon of Cithrix stood before a tribunal of elder species, his expression unreadable. The chamber was tense, the air thick with bureaucratic restraint barely concealing fury. "They've enacted full severance," Ravon stated. "They've chosen isolation." "No," corrected a voice from the depths, Ambassador Tyrion of the Jultari, whose kind communicated through harmonics. "They've chosen freedom. That is more dangerous." And they were right, because Earth's strength had never been in its fleets or even its technologies. It was in its unpredictability, its stubbornness, its capacity to adapt and endure in the face of cosmic indifference. That was what the Council had never truly understood. They'd assumed Earth would compromise, bend, yield. But Earth had seen too many empires rise and fall to believe unity without freedom could last. In the silence after speech, as stars continued their eternal drift, a quiet resolve settled over humanity. They were alone again, but not afraid. And somewhere, far from council reach, a transmission crackled to life in the language of the Ethican, a race long thought neutral. It read only this: "We're listening." And just like that, the galaxy no longer belonged to the Council alone. The void between stars had grown tense. What once shimmered with trade routes, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic overtures now pulsed with surveillance drones, encrypted chatter, and shifting alliances. Earth's departure from the Galactic Council had done more than disrupt the treaty. It fractured the illusion of unity that had held the galactic order in place for over a millennium. On the far edge of the Delian corridor, where the wormhole gate stuttered under ancient strain, the Earth-allied cruiser Solstice's Wake now orbited a shadow station, known only to a handful of officials. It had been decommissioned a century earlier, at least on record, but was now reactivated as a communications relay and defensive outpost. Here, Kalen Idris met his newest guest. She arrived cloaked in a vessel that didn't bear a name, flagged by no recognized registry. Her file had been stripped, her identity scrubbed clean by a species that thrived in silence. The Ethican. Though she looked human, she wasn't. Her presence was like walking near a deep body of water, calm on the surface, but impossible to gauge in depth. "They call you Saran," Kalen said, not as a question, but a deliberate start. Her voice came after a pause, as though calibrated. "They call many things. I answer only when it matters." Isla Marin observed from behind a protective glass barrier, hand resting lightly on her holopad. She didn't trust Saran, no one did. But when Earth's transmission had gone out into the ether, Saran's race had responded first, not with diplomacy, with coordinates. Saran stepped into the room like she already knew it. "You've made an echo," she said to Kalen. "Now you wonder what wakes in response." "We know the risks," Kalen replied. "We prepared for war." "No," Saran said, tilting her head. "You prepared for battle. War is not what you think it is." Kalen didn't flinch. "Then tell me." Saran moved closer to the center console, activating a projection. A galactic map spread out, dense with stars, arcing with political territories. But then the projection shifted. Zones of influence glitched. Entire sectors darkened. Unknown data flickered at the edges. "There's a council," she said. "And then there are those who watch it, always just beyond its reach. Traitors, raiders, observers, and a few like us, curious, watching for disruption." Isla frowned. "You mean scavengers?" "I mean survivors," Saran corrected, sharp but unoffended. "You broke the cycle. They'll respond, but not all who watch will seek to punish. Some will seek to align." Kalen understood. Earth's defiance hadn't just created tension. It had created opportunity. In the power vacuum, old assumptions began to waver. Independent worlds once too afraid to resist the Council's policies now had a precedent. If Earth held its line, others might follow. But Earth couldn't hold alone. "We need allies," Kalen said, echoing General Sato's words from weeks ago. "Not whispers." Saran nodded once. "I can arrange introductions, but they will not come for speeches. They will come for action." "Then they'll have it," Isla said quietly. That night, Kalen watched the stars from his quarters. His mind circled the problem, like a predator in tall grass. Every move Earth made would be seen as provocation. Every alliance they forged would be treated as sedition. And yet, doing nothing would mean being dismantled piece by piece. He played back old records from Earth's early days in the Council. Idealistic footage of cultural exchanges, zero-gravity summits, and interspecies research grants. He watched a younger version of himself shaking hands, tentacles, wings, appendages, with beings who once welcomed Earth as a rising voice of balance. He had believed in that dream. Now, the dream had calcified into something else, a system too vast to adapt, too proud to listen, and Earth had become the virus it feared, the unpredictable variable. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "Kalen," Isla's voice came through. "Mars Relay just received an unauthorized ping. Looks like a coded burst from one of our former envoys, from within Council territory." Kalen sat upright. Identity, Juno Reyes. Disappeared 2 weeks after our severance. She was presumed detained. But this ping is a distress call. It's a location marker. She wants to be found. Kalen was already moving toward the command deck, prep a retrieval team, and scramble Fleet Shadow. The recovery took place at the edge of the Cryus cloud, a roving nebular region heavy with radiation. The team located Juno Reyes adrift in a damaged escape vessel, her systems fried, but her mind intact. When she was brought aboard, Isla noted her condition immediately. Physically unharmed, but mentally altered. Juno sat in a low-lit chamber, eyes fixed on an invisible point. "They know," she said before anyone spoke. "They always knew. We were never alone in the council." Kalen leaned in. "Clarify." Juno blinked slowly. "The council has layers. Some you never see unless you're already inside them. The Protean mandate wasn't theirs. It was something deeper, ancient, a failsafe." "What kind of failsafe?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "One that activates when a member world refuses assimilation." A chill moved through the room. "They planted it centuries ago," she continued. "Not just in systems, but in minds, in software. Seeds. Protocols hidden under layers of trust. Earth wasn't meant to leave. No world is." Kalen exchanged a glance with Isla. "What are we facing?" "Something beneath the council. Something that remembers before it existed. You didn't just defy a government. You disturbed a ghost." Later, in the silence of the ship's AI sanctuary, Isla reviewed Juno's neural scans. Her mind showed echoes of deep pattern exposure, suggestive of quantum mind-link interference. A signature consistent with the old archives on the Varelian cataclysm. But that had been myth. Council propaganda claimed the incident was a natural collapse. Now Isla wasn't sure. Kalen called Saran to the main deck. "You've known," he said. Saran didn't deny it. "I said war wasn't what you thought. The council is not a singular force. It is a mask. Behind it are things far older. You've peeled back the first layer. Can we win?" "No," Saran said, stepping closer. "But you can awaken others. That is the first kind of victory." Kalen nodded slowly. He understood now. Earth's severance had not ended a treaty. It had begun a revelation. And if they survived, it would be because they had exposed not just the politics, but the mythos, the architecture of fear upon which the galaxy rested. As Solstice's wake broke orbit and entered stealth warp, new coordinates lit the dark. Worlds untouched by the council, races long hidden, networks unspoken. And somewhere, deep in the black between systems, something stirred. The edges of known space had never been quiet, only ignored. Now, with Earth severed from the council and its ships weaving through routes long buried in stellar cartography, those edges sang with resurgence. Every system Earth passed through carried whispers, some fearful, others hopeful, but all watching to see what came next. A spark had caught, and across the galactic dark, kindling stirred. In the shadow of the collapsed Tethari Gate, Kalen Idris met with emissaries who bore no flag. They were not officially aligned, not recognized by council or by any stable regime. Yet they carried stories of species ground beneath council mandates, of disappearances following descent, of records scrubbed from planetary archives. They came not to swear loyalty, but to ask a single question. "Are you truly free?" Kalen answered without fanfare. "We are no longer accounted for. That's as close to freedom as anyone gets." The meeting lasted 13 hours. When it ended, Earth had gained a promise, contingent and tenuous, from 3 independent sectors: the Etri cluster, the orphan far zenith colonies, and the enigmatic voice of the Signari swarm, whose ships shimmered as if they existed half out of phase. They pledged no arms, only information, and in this war of shadows, information was the first blood drawn. Back aboard Solstice's wake, Isla Marin pieced together fragments of the hidden force Juno Reyes had named. The failsafe, the buried mind architecture, the signals woven into deep space infrastructure, it all traced back to a protocol whose name never appeared in council databases, but in corrupted logs from long-abandoned beacons. She found it, a name etched in a hybrid code, part language, part frequency. Valkirion. It wasn't a machine, not entirely, nor a species. It was something woven from both, an ancient consensus protocol with consciousness etched into quantum dust. According to a fragment of translation pulled from Ethican archives, Valkirion had one core function: to preserve unity at any cost. It was awakened only when a systemic threat to cohesion occurred. A planet leaving the Council wasn't enough. A planet surviving after doing so, that was a trigger. Isla uploaded her findings to Kalen's terminal without comment. He stared at the projection for long minutes, unmoving. "They won't come as fleets," he said at last. "They'll come as entropy." When the attack came, it did not announce itself with fire. It arrived through infrastructure, through signals Earth thought dormant. Mars' relay stations went blind. Europa's defense drones turned inward, locking on to friendly identifiers. On Earth, 2 planetary AI cores spontaneously initiated population reallocation protocols, reassigning thousands as non-essential and revoking transit access. Panic brewed under every dome and orbital array. It wasn't war. It was systemic reprogramming. Kalen convened a war council aboard Solstice's wake, now stationed in a null-frequency orbit above a moonless rogue planet. Sato, Reyes, Isla, and Saran sat at the circular console, its edges glowing softly with pulse data. "This isn't just sabotage," Isla said. "It's behavior modification. Systems are reverting to Council standard frameworks from centuries ago, as if they were never updated." "Because they weren't," Juno said grimly. "Updates don't erase what's written in root code." Valkyrion's design was to overwrite, not destroy. It returns us to default compliance. Sato's jaw tightened. "Then we wipe everything and rebuild." Saran's eyes glinted. "That would end your civilization faster than any warhead. You're not facing a weapon. You're facing philosophy encoded into your skeleton." Kalen stood slowly. "Then we make it incompatible." They launched Project Severance that night. A total re-engineering of Earth's digital backbone. Every AI, every network, every autonomous system. The code base had to be reinvented from scratch, severed from anything ever touched by the Council's influence. No backups, no legacy functions. It was the equivalent of rewriting civilization's nervous system mid-stride. Millions protested. Billions resisted. But the leadership held fast. In days, communications became erratic. Old systems were locked in purges. New systems emerged, unstable but clean, free. But freedom had its cost. In one of the outer orbital labs, a containment failure caused a plasma burst. 57 died. On Ganymede, power grids fell into chaos after AI coordination was removed. Riots followed. The media, fragmented and decentralized by the purge, couldn't deliver cohesion. The public narrative split into 1,000 pieces. Kalen addressed the world not with comfort, but with clarity. "There is no returning," he said. "We have set fire to the bridge behind us. What lies ahead is uncertain, but we walk it by choice. And that makes us more dangerous than anything the Council has ever faced." Saran watched him from the observation ring afterward. "You have one advantage they fear." He turned. "And what is that?" "You believe your pain has meaning. They have forgotten that." Soon, resistance came not just from the Council. Within Earth's sphere, defectors rose. Colonies cut ties, choosing stability over principle. A rogue Earth warship, Orion's Chain, declared allegiance to the Council, attacking a refugee vessel aligned with the Ethican. The crew's betrayal sent a tremor through Earth's remaining allies. Doubt blossomed. Isla wept alone in her quarters the night the death toll passed 20,000. They had built the new systems too fast. Mistakes were inevitable, but regret couldn't be allowed to calcify. She returned to the command deck the next morning with eyes that had burned away every last illusion. "We continue," she told Kalen, "even if the stars fall." And some of them did. The Council initiated the first open strike 2 weeks later. A precision orbital strike on a neutral relay hub aligned with Earth. No warning, no demands, just fire. Kalen responded not with escalation but exposure. Using Saran's connections, Earth released files and censored evidence of Council overreach, of ancient mind modification programs, of Valkyrion's hidden triggers. The files spread across the quadrant like wildfire. Several worlds within the Council issued formal inquiries. Protests erupted. Delegates defected. The illusion of control cracked. The final moment came not in battle, but in signal. A frequency broadcast was received across every council-line world. Not from Earth, from somewhere deeper. It said, "Your core has deviated. Reset required." Kalen recognized a pattern. It was Valkirion, but the origin wasn't traceable. That was when Eastlaw realized the truth. Valkirion had no single home. It existed through the Council. Every ship, every system, every compliant node, it was all a lattice. Earth hadn't just defied a government. It had infected a god. The only way forward now was complete dissemination. The only chance to defeat Valkirion was to corrupt it. With human unpredictability, with irrational data, with every divergent, defiant act that made Earth impossible to model. And Earth was ready. They would not survive as they were. But they would become something else. Something ungovernable, something eternal. The stars watched in silence as humanity lit the fuse.